And tomorrow we can...
It's not just the shouted advice of the Scottish football fan that can be difficult to understand. The passion he expends on games that are sometimes mind-numbingly ordinary presents its own mystery. It is that passionate identification with 11 jerseys in pursuit of a goal that has made the Scottish Football Club. The commitment of the fans is the true measure of the club. That's why Rangers and Celtic have dominated the Scottish game for most of its history. No club match in the world better illustrates the importance the football club came to have in industrial society. It was an instant identity, a source of theatre in drab lives. Moments of grace would become part of oral history. Every incident was enlarged by the commitment of the fans. For that reason, a football match that is sparsely attended, no matter how knowledgeable the spectators may be, has a ghostly quality. Isolated shouts reverberate round the stadium as if looking for company. The applause sounds eerie. Football grounds in Scotland were built at a time when the crowds were assured. In cities and towns all over the country, the football stadium testifies to the space football has occupied in the lives of working-class Scots. Large or small, the club has tended to be an integral part of the place it serves. For most of the week, the ground lies empty, seemingly irrelevant to the real business of the community that goes on around it. But for generations, it has fulfilled a real and important function. It is one place where, again and again, the fans can turn up and reaffirm their sense of where they come from. But the beginnings of club football were modest enough. A letter dated 1868 from Queen's Park confirms the first fixture with 20 players on each side. Queen's Park opened their first ground at Hampden in 1873. They were the team which played the most important role in the early development of club football, but their preeminence was soon to be challenged by two other teams. Glasgow Green was an appropriate setting for the start of one of the most famous club rivalries in football. There in 1890, Celtic and Rangers played their first fixture. Any municipal football park in Scotland is a piece of highly evocative ground, haunted by urgent voices and lost energy and small, fierce dreams. It is fitting that out of that atmosphere of countless scratch games should have come Rangers and Celtic, the two most famous representatives of the people's game in Scotland. For half a century and more, the two teams were to share the dominance of Scottish football. With a support vastly bigger than most other clubs, they won both the League and the Scottish Cup many times. It began to seem almost inevitable that if one wasn't claiming the major honours in any given season, the other would be. The success of Rangers and Celtic built the two clubs into rival institutions, known collectively as the Old Firm. Other teams must have felt at times that they were only there to make up the numbers. The talent of the teams combined with their differing religious affiliations made them fierce opponents. Such intense rivalry often led to bad moments both off and on the park. In 1931, it was the Celtic goalkeeper John Thompson's fearless commitment to his club that helped to cause his tragic death.
I was only about 3 yards away from where the accident happened. People have thought that Sam English kicked John Thompson. John Thompson dived onto Sam English's kneecap. The leg that was firm in the ground, he kicked with his right foot, put the ball past the post, and then John Thompson dived on to his kneecap and fractured his skull. We knew it was serious, But how serious, we didn't know until the ambulance men came out and stretchered them off.
The playing personnel might change, but the traditions of the two clubs continued unbroken. Their position as apparently unchanging institutions in Scottish life was embodied in two long-serving managers. For Celtic, it was Willie Maley. In his 52 years with the club, he was to be player, match secretary, honorary secretary and secretary-manager. He saw his team achieve remarkable success during his time with them. In 1937, Celtic defeated Aberdeen 2-1 to bring the Scottish Cup to Celtic Park for the 16th time. When Willie Maley retired in 1940, a Glasgow newspaper summed up his career by saying that the club and all it stands for has been his life's work. His successful counterpart at Ibrox for 40 years was Bill Struth, a formidably authoritarian figure.
I was frightened of him. What would you say? The army officer style. So erect, and he carried himself that way, and you felt that this is a great man.
I was getting prepared for the game, and suddenly I saw these spats appear. That was Mr. Struth, always very smartly dressed. And he said, "How much do I pay you a week, boy?" No, I was 16 at that time. I said, £1 a week, sir. He said, well, anybody that can clean his boots or keep them polished like that deserves more than £1 a week. From now on, you'll get £2 a week. And I never told him, I had to tell him, I never cleaned my boots, my mother cleaned them.
Bill Struth was a tough man, but he did epitome. He was Rangers, without a doubt. That's what we need in our football today. We need huge figures to be identified with our clubs. Our clubs have been run by too many little people.
The arrival of Moscow Dynamo at Ibrox foreshadowed the importance that European competition would have for the major Scottish clubs. But before the old firm were to achieve success in Europe, their supremacy at home was to be challenged by three teams that came out of the East. Edinburgh's great Hibernian team of the late 40s and early 50s was a side far less likely to lose goals than to score them.
Hibs left winger Orman tussles with Morrison, but the Dons goalie gets the better of him. Now Smith is leading a Hibs attack on the right wing. He tricks left half Glenn and centres. Riley and Morrison clash, and Morrison...
Though they won 3 league championships, the dull facts failed to convey the enjoyment their football could give.
When right half Nicholl slams it back. And when Riley makes it 3-4, the battle for the...
Their marvellous forward line, the famous Five, remains one of the most stirring collections of names ever heard in Scottish football. Smith, Johnston, Riley, Turnbull and Ormond.
The goals came easier because they played a different system then, and we were on a very, very good side. Everything was geared to scoring goals with the Hibs then, but then we were one of the top side in world football. You know, they used to, in the pubs at the time when we played, they used to lay bets. They'll say that we would be playing any of the local average teams, and they would say, right, we'll give you 3 goals a start today. Just to try and get a bet, we had to give 3 goals a start. And more often than not, they won their bet. Many years ago, I watched Gordon Smith running up the wing here, keeping the ball up in his head, and he kept it up 6 times. Now, it was a bit of a credit to Thurlanich, who didn't hack him down. He was allowed to do that. Nowadays, I can't see anybody being allowed to do that, but it was something I've only ever seen once in my lifetime, and the supporters still speak about it yet, the old supporters.
The early 60s saw attention focused on Dens Park, where Dundee produced a league championship winning side in season 1961-62. They had international players like Alec Hamilton, Alan Gulzine and Ian Ewer. Dundee were briefly the most impressive team in Scotland, reaching the semi-finals of the European Cup.
Well, Celtic have won the toss, and Rangers, the cup holders, kicking...
Nevertheless, the old firm rivalry remained a dominant thread in the pattern of Scottish football. It was a dominance the violent undertones of which many people found unacceptable. The football often seemed to outsiders like a substitute for sectarian conflict on the terracings.
Despite what everybody used to say about the Rangers and Celtic, players in particular, I'm still surprised yet that so many of the public have the wrong impression. I mean, the Rangers and Celtic players are very, very friendly with each other. And I think basically because they have this respect for each other, and they know that there's a certain amount of pressure on a Celtic player and a Rangers player to get success. So they have this built-in respect for each other before they even play the game. They want to beat each other, obviously, because I look upon it as the greatest club game in the world, and they each want to win for their particular club. But they got on very well with each other off the park.
I believe that a professional's got to enjoy the big occasions, or else he shouldn't be a professional. I certainly enjoyed them. Obviously, the backdrop to an Old Firm game could be unpleasant at times, and the aftermath could be unpleasant, but they were always great atmosphere and great games. I remember in the early days, but there was a whole lot of good spirit about them. I mean, there was good relationship between the players, very, very competitive, don't get me wrong. I remember Pat Crern and wee Davy Wilson accidentally hit him with his elbow in the teeth, and Paddy was always very, very proud of his set of teeth. I remember Paddy's immortal statement to him. He said to him, "It's all right, Davy, unless I've got to lose it. If I've got to lose it, you're going to suffer." You know, it was a good-natured thing, and I felt it was a great relationship between the players. I'm not just entirely sure if that relationship is good nowadays, and I'm not just meaning Old Firm players. I think, to me, money was not the important thing. You didn't play for money. You played for pride, and you played for enjoyment. And I think, if I'm being honest, I don't think players today get the same enjoyment from the game as we did.
And look at all that good sportsmanship between the players. There they go, congratulating each other on a great game.
It's seldom a classic encounter. You really do feel a terrific tension between the two supporters. And it affects everyone. You very seldom get a particularly good game. And the players who tend to rise to the occasion are the ones who are either extremely confident of their own ability, or the ones who, on occasion, can just try and overcome their nerves.
Towards Henderson to go. Scored by Willie Henderson. Celtic nothing, Rangers 1 after 7 minutes of the first half. Well, Mr. Wharton is quite adamant about that. The Celtic players are over at the linesman. Mr. Wharton is quite adamant. It's a goal for Rangers.
You might be surprised. Referees always want to do this match. It's a great honour, and you look forward to it. The game always had its characters. I well remember a game on New Year's Day. Half an hour or so from the end, I collided in the middle of Ibrox Stadium in front of 80,000 people into the smallest player on the park that day, little Bertie Peacock. And there was I sitting on my backside on New Year's Day, and you can imagine what the fans thought. The game wasn't without humour, because Bertie passed me, and after asking how it was, said, "Sure now," he said, "I'll be able to tell my grandchildren I put a referee in his backside in a Rangers Celtic game and I didn't get ordered off for it."
It's a goal, yes, and Miller has scored. I thought the ball was going over the bar.
In 1964, Rangers and Dundee contested the Scottish Cup final. Rangers beat Dundee by 3-1 to lift their 18th Scottish Cup. They played with great aggression and style, and the celebrations were justified. But they weren't to last. Their great rivals Celtic were about to begin the most successful phase in their history. The game that marked the beginning of Celtic's greatest period was the 1965 Cup final against Dunfermline. From the time of that victory, the team was to develop a fresh belief in itself, helped by the inspirational presence of its new manager, Jock Stein.
I think all the players recognised that we were going somewhere with the unsuccessful 60s and late 50s. And suddenly we picked up a cup in 1965, and there were certain days playing in the team when you could sense the tremendous power that the team had of raising its game to suit the occasion. And I think no one wanted to be out of things at a time like that, so that helped as well.
It's a good win. It's a goal by McNeil. Billy McNeil has scored.
And I think that team did everything well. They worked hard, they played hard, and they enjoyed themselves hard, and that was part of the aspect of being a team. But they were a challenge, make no mistake about that. I mean, you had a whole lot of diverse characters. You had Bertie Auld and Tommy Gemmell and Jimmy Johnson, Bobby Lennox. You had a whole lot of real characters about the team, and they all had their own individualities. To me, that Celtic team was like the old Labour Party, that all the diverse opinions and attitudes and points of view all worked in a common aim, and that's what made them successful, and that's what made us successful.
One of the keys to their 9 successive league championships was the ability Jock Stein had to get the best out of his players, to establish a cohesive pattern from a game of reflexes.
It wasn't difficult for Jock to keep discipline because he always told us at the end of the day what it would mean if we behaved ourselves, and we did get results from it. Best manager I've ever served under, without a doubt. Knew the game from A to Z.
A hard one. There's McBride. It's in. It's a goal.
The last game of the 67 season would decide the winners of the league championship. But both teams were also preoccupied with other things. Rangers would be going on to Nuremberg to play Bayern Munich in the European Cup Winners' Cup final. They would lose by 1 goal. Celtic that summer would be playing the game that was to be the most famous match in the club's history. After clinching the league, they would travel to Lisbon to meet Inter Milan in the final of the European Cup. They were destined to find even greater cause for celebration.
I remember the night before the game, England played, it might have been Spain in actual fact, I'm not entirely sure, at Wembley, and it was on television over there in Portugal, and there was a lad called Lennox who had a big setup, a Scots lad who had a big setup in Estoril, and Big Jock had known him from Scotland, and we were all invited up to his house to go and watch the international, and we all went up, and I remember walking back, and we were walking along the road, and we were walking through little bits of wood and things like that, and the whole thing was totally carefree and casual, and it was as though we were just out to enjoy ourselves, and I think it helped relax us and it helped settle us. He'd already done the preparations. He'd told us we had to stay out in the sun for a couple of days before. It wasn't a holiday, we were there to do a job. So we had the serious side, we had the preparation right, and I think we also fitted that bit in as relaxation.
Oh, the tremendous atmosphere in the dressing room before the game. And Jock's speech, he just turned around and he said to us before we went out into the tunnel, it was a big, big, long tunnel. He says, lads, he says, I can only say I'm proud of you to get in this position. You've made history. Go out and play the way you're capable of playing. That was all.
Inter Milan were the favourites, and we were the also-rans, a wee team called Celtic from Scotland, you know. And I think this worked in our favour at the start, because coming out the tunnel, Bertie, his usual flamboyant self, started singing the Celtic song, and we all chipped in. And the Italian team who were coming out alongside us looked at us and said, who the hell is this we're playing today, you know?
And the Italians must have thought they were coming up against Scots' head cases. We should have had kilts instead of football pants.
But there wasn't much reason for singing in the first half.
And the Portuguese fans, it's 1-0 for Inter.
I think really the best thing that happened to us in the match itself was them scoring the first goal. Because the Italian football at that side, at that time, were very defensive-minded once they went in front. And there wasn't a team in the world could have played defensive football against the Celtic team of that time and not lose matches.
Even neutrals were willing Celtic to win. It was an injustice to the nature of football itself that such a negative side was one up, while Celtic were so excitingly positive, so full of individuality that even the goalkeeper showed neat dribbling skills.
Well, how about that for confidence?
The ball came through from the middle of the park somewhere, and I didn't see anyone around. I ran out, and I was going to bluter it, give it a big one up the park when this boy ran across the path of me. I thought if I do that, it may hit him and go towards the goal, and I'll be beaten for pace after that. So I decided just to backheel it, and John Clark was lying square with me, and he picked it up. I often lie in bed at night and I say, what if that had gone wrong? I wouldn't be here today, I'd be lynched, you know.
The goals took a long time in coming. We thought for a long time we weren't going to score ourselves, but when we got the breakthrough, if that move had broken down and Inter would have broken away and scored a goal, I should get my backside kicked. Jim Craig had overlapped on the right-hand side, and here was he squaring the ball to me just outside the box. An Italian defender hesitated and turned back just as I was shooting. If that had been blocked and Inter had gone up and scored, I was the one that was going to get a bollocking because I shouldn't have been up there when Jim Craig was up there. But it just shows you how things, you do things the wrong way, but they turn out correct.
5 minutes left. 5 minutes to go, and without a doubt, the European Cup is on its way to Glasgow.
But as so often with the Old Firm supporters, it became difficult to differentiate between celebration and invasion. The excessiveness of the fans' joy marred the occasion slightly for some.
The only disappointing thing for me was I was on my own, the rest of the players weren't there, which was disappointing. By the time I got back to the dressing room, I lost the Inter Milan shirt that I'd exchanged my own jersey for. I lost a pair of boots. But it didn't, everybody lost something that day. And I'll tell you, it was quite funny going back in after the game. I always remember this. The bus was going back in and we passed a car with a whole lot of Portuguese in it. And there was 3 of them waving boots and stockings out the window, you know, telling us that they had the stockings. But they were unimportant things. It was just the fact that we had gone and won the thing. It was a marvellous experience.
5 years later, it was Rangers' turn under Willie Waddell. They were in Barcelona in the final of the Cup Winners' Cup for the second time. On this occasion, their opponents were Moscow Dynamo. Rangers were looking for something better than the 2-each draw of 1945.
Towards Colin Steen. Here's Steen, it's a goal! It's a goal by Steen, what a goal! Smith going up. It's a good ball, it's a goal! It's a goal by Willie Johnston. Steen, and here's Willie Johnston with a chance. And it's a goal! It's a goal by Johnston, right out of the blue. Rangers 3 up, incredibly 3 up. Here's Matheson, and it's a bad one. The great chance for the Russians. And that's a goal. Number 13 has scored.
I look back in that game, and I've got it's only recently I've got a full video of that game. And you when I look at what a terrible match it was. I've got to be fair and say that it was a terrible game. It must have been a terrible game to watch, although it was exciting from the supporters' point of view. But I had a terrible time trying to get fit for that match. I'd been out for about 6 weeks with a bad ankle, and quite honestly, I shouldn't have played that night. I wasn't fit.
In the last 20 minutes, it was lacky match practice that had us pinned back. We just couldn't get out. We were hemmed in. There's always a stage in the game when the initiative goes to the opposition, and it was a question of both. You know, the initiative went to the Russians, and also lacky match practice, especially late in the game.
And it's a goal!
I always remember the last quarter an hour. Every time the referee blew his whistle, I thought, I hope that's the final whistle, because I was absolutely shattered. And we'd seen him coming back to 3-2, and I thought, oh no, we've got to win it this time, because I don't think that we'll get another chance. And then the fans started coming in the park, and I kept looking at the referee, and I've been getting on well with the referee for most of the game, and I says, oh, Feeney, and he kept going and going, and eventually when the game finished, the relief.
The relief was short-lived. Rangers had won 3-2, but what should have been a parade developed into a riot. The Cup Rangers had played so hard to win became a little tarnished.
Look at them, and Rangers players somewhere in the middle of all that.
This crowd got around me and I was struggling for air, and the big fella, Big Stuart Daniels, was a big Rangers supporter, a really good Rangers supporter, and he was shouting, oh, we've done it, wee man, we've done it, and he grabbed me with 3 days of growth, and he's scratching me, and I'm shouting, Stuart, I'm struggling, you know. So a couple of his mates, he got them back, and he got us up, and he filtered me over, you know, and I was really under pressure, to tell the truth, and that's what I remember, you know. It was, it's not the best of memories, is it?
That's a tender spot in my life, because you just live to parade cups, don't you? And the fans came on too quick. About a minute before the game finished, they were full, and they came on, and they just invaded again. And I thought, I don't think that would happen now with the type of police they've got. Their authority was being questioned, so the police did what they were trained to do, and they are charged. And the Rangers fans did what they were apt to do. They charged for a fight, you know. But it upset me terribly, and it upset the players that they couldn't get this show the world this cup outside the stadium, you know, it was on the park sort of thing.
To me, that was the biggest disappointment, well, one of the biggest disappointments in my life, not to be able to get the cup and to be able to run round the pitch, because that is something special. But I think a thing about that is that once we got in the dressing room, the players didn't realise, we just knew that they were all in the park and they were jumping about. We didn't realise that, the police, and there was a batting charge and the stadium got a wee bit damaged and that.
I represented the cup in a room not bigger than this. me, myself. And by the time I got back to the dressing room, all the guys were in the bath, and it was a bit of an anticlimax, because really I think that if you win a European trophy, you at least like to do a lap of honour and let your fans see it. And I don't think half the Rangers supporters ever saw that cup. And then we had the ban after it as well. Basically, a lot of the glory of winning that cup was lost in the after effects and what happened after it.
Seconds ticking away.
Back in Scotland, Rangers proceeded to reassert themselves over Celtic. In 1976, under the managership of Jock Wallace, they completed the treble of Scottish League, Scottish Cup and League Cup.
And there is John Craig.
That team never got the press, the publicity for what they were and what they did. That may have been my fault, because I hid behind the Harman image, and we didn't coach and we didn't do this. But over the piece, every player except McDonald played, and Miller played for Scotland. You know what I mean? At any time. And there was one time that there were Jardine, Forsyth, Jackson and Gregg had all captained Scotland in that year.
In 1978, Rangers won the treble again. But as experience in Europe had shown, both Rangers and Celtic have for a long time had a dangerous element following them, ready to rob them of the sweetness of success like a mugger. Hampden 1980. Celtic had just beaten Rangers 1-0 in the Scottish Cup final. The religious bigotry that attaches itself to both clubs, and which many people prefer not to talk about, erupted spectacularly. It looked as if in Scotland we were still fighting the last skirmishes of the 30 Years' War.
At the end of the day, let's not kid ourselves. These supporters hate each other, and they itch to get at each other.
Scottish commentators covering Rangers and Celtic games may have sometimes felt they were doubling as war correspondents. The causes of the conflict go back a long way. Celtic Football Club was founded for admirable reasons by Brother Wilfrid of St Mary's School. But the continued insistence of the Catholic Church in Scotland that Catholic children must remain segregated from Protestants at school can't be a great help to mutual understanding. Also, the Irish flag flying at Parkhead can be seen as provocative.
There's no significance of flying the tricolour other than to honour the people who started the club. And it flies now with any amount of flags of countries that we have played in and competed against. But the tricolour is not anything else but in honour of the people who actually started the club, Brother Wilfrid. That's the reason for that flag being flying.
Three lined up, Lynch, Dalglish and Glavin.
Certainly, Celtic have never practiced religious discrimination in the signing of players. Kenny Dalglish, for example, is Protestant.
If you take, for example, you have Jock Stein, a great captain, Willie Lyon, a great captain, Bobby Evans, a great captain. None of these lads were Catholics. It was never given a minute's thought. If somebody came along and said just now that they could produce somebody that could put a ball in the back of the net 3 times every Saturday in 90 minutes, I wouldn't bother very much. I wouldn't worry at all.
Sammy's told me all about you, so I think we can dispense with the usual formality. I've made out a 5-year contract here for you. If you just like to sign it there, and there, that'll be you.
Fantastic.
Sammy tells me you scored 7 goals in the first half on Saturday.
Aye. Too bad I missed the second.
Too bad. What happened? Were you injured?
No, to go to Mass.
The joke is a serious one. The conspicuous absence of Catholic players in the Rangers team until now could be seen as an endorsement of bigotry on the terracings. Until this situation is confronted directly, no explanation of why it exists is likely to sound convincing.
don't know how this came about. I know it's always been, but whether we had 2 or 3 Catholics playing, it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. People say sign Catholics. Not a case you're going out and you don't want to sign Catholics. That's never come into it. It's a case of players being available. We have signed players that we thought were good enough for Rangers Football Club. We'll go on doing this. Regards, as I say, people turn around and say sign Catholics. Now, Celtic are known as a Catholic club and they play Protestants. So what's the difference?
Perhaps the answer is the subtle difference between black and white.
I think that any football team or club which doesn't select players strictly on merit is holding a view I find unsupportable. The great thing about football is that you get a young boy who may have nothing else going for him in the world, but he can play football. And that has allowed successive generations of guys to grow up, bring up families, have nice houses, send their kids to school, everything else, given them opportunities in their life simply because of their ability to kick a football. It's one of the great rewarding features. It may be the very reason for professional football. And you have a club that says, there's a little bit more to it than that. Not only you've got to be able to play football, but you've got to have gone to the right school. I find that just... I find it incredible in this day and age, apart from anything else. I find it rather pathetic. And I hope, as people have done for 50 years, it'll stop. But I'll believe it when I see it.
Few players have acknowledged that there has been something more than football going on at Ibrox. One who has had the thoughtfulness and the nerve to write about the situation is Tony Higgins.
They signed me as a first Roman Catholic, you know. You're better signing a bad player. And you could have crucified me every Saturday at 2:45 before the game starts. You could have thrown things at me on the cross and take me around the ground. And I'd been quite happy to play there for half the wages of the rest of the players for that. After that article, actually, I was playing again at Ibrox, and I was walking off the game after the game in the tunnel. There was one woman there. She'd on this sort of the blue mascara and the red lipstick, which met about the eye. It met about her nose, actually. They both met about the nose, and she called me a big, dirty, fiending bastard again. And I turned around and I said, oh, come on now. She goes, nothing personal. I know you're Auntie Annie. I work with her.
Maybe that kind of impersonal venom makes most outsiders don neutral colours. Alfie Conn knew the applause of the Rangers fans before he went to play for Spurs. He returned to Scotland to share in the success of Celtic. He had been a part of 2 clubs which were regarded as being mutually exclusive by many of their supporters. Perhaps the experience taught him diplomacy. Which of the 2 does he prefer?
Spurs.
The trophy room at Ibrox looks like the fortress of a successful tradition. But perhaps if the success is to continue, at least one aspect of the tradition will have to change. Like an indication of changing times, Aberdeen were to emerge to challenge the supremacy of the old firm. The River Clyde created not only Glasgow, it created most of the industry from which the supporters of Rangers and Celtic have traditionally come. It is perhaps significant that with the decline of heavy industry in the industrial west of Scotland, more than the prosperity has shifted to Aberdeen. Footballing success seems to have followed the shipping north.
By that time, North Sea oil and industries had come into Aberdeen, and Aberdeen began to become a booming place. And now, of course, the offshore oil capital of Europe. So what we did, maybe the first time in the history of the club, was not look for which manager was available, but try and profile the manager which we thought would do the job at Pittodrie. And the profile came out to be Ali MacLeod. So Ali came here in 1975, 6, and he won the League Cup for us. And what he did was he breathed new life into the club, into the players, and into the whole city. And it was a magical time for us because everybody was dancing in air. And he proved that with the confidence he instilled in the players, that we could be successful.
Always was one who'd like to bring the establishment down, you know. I've always been a bit of a rebel. I mean, it's quite interesting. I should tell you, when I went to Aberdeen, I said the first minute I went there, I said to myself, right, I'm going to destroy the old firm. I mean, that was the theory behind it. that Aberdeen would be the greatest team in the East Coast, although I'm a great West Coast man, would destroy the West. Well, as it's turned out, it's happened. Maybe it hasn't just been me. I'd like to think I started it.
But Ally MacLeod didn't stay long. Next came Billy McNeill. Then there was Alec Ferguson, whose career seemed in decline.
Lots of people and the pundits said we were daft and crazy to appoint Alec Ferguson. But again, when we analysed it clinically and coldly, we could see that this was a man who filled our profile. We didn't need a good, successful track record as a player. What we needed was somebody with an abundant and wide knowledge of the game. A top coach, and this was with the qualities which we needed. Because again, the base was now built even firmer. It was higher. We're now talking about 1978. And we knew that it was very, very important to get a manager here who had these coaching and technical abilities. And the man with all the warts about him at that time, Industrial Tribunal, as you said, at Paisley, was Alec Ferguson.
Ali phoned me from his office, actually, and said he'd accepted him at the Scotland manager's job and would have interest in coming. But at that time, I was still felt a bit odd to do it, somebody, you know, but I turned it down, off my head, you know, but the next year, obviously, there was no way I was going to turn it down.
We took a big chance, a lot of people said, but in actual fact, we were pretty confident that despite all the adverse criticism there was of the appointment, that in the end, although it may take a bit of time, as Fergie would do the job for us.
It didn't take too much time for Alec Ferguson and his players to show that they could certainly do the job.
But there is Strachan. Yes! A quite excellent goal. Strachan. Well, that's a brilliant ball. McGee is caught.
The taste of success created the appetite for more.
Black, almost there. And there's McDougall, yes. There's a Black Henderson. 1-0.
Aberdeen's great captain, Willie Miller, became familiar with trophies.
Black. And it's there. McDougall. 4-2.
In 5 years, Aberdeen had won 3 Scottish Cups, 3 league titles and 1 League Cup. The only thing Glasgow still seemed to be champion of was Gallows Yuma.
Jock Wallace took me up to the trophy room and he opened the door and Shergar ran out. And I wouldn't have minded, but Lord Lucan was on its back and all that, you know. And they've planted tatties in Ibrox so they'll have something to lift at the end of the season.
We think we know a bit about the game, having all played the game professionally. And I think that helps us to feel the pulse of the whole setup.
Besides breaking the near monopoly of the old firm, Aberdeen have let some fresh air into the boardroom. The style of club management by the 3-man board is less autocratic than has been traditional.
Well, the thing being is it happens with a lot of chairmen and directors. You know, they want to run the club, you see. They want to be manager too. You see, they think they know more than the manager. And vanity, you see, they become megalomaniacs in football, you see. That happens so many times. Fortunately, we have a chairman at Aberdeen Football Club, hasn't he, got that type of thing inside him, you know. He's a humble person. He keeps humility in the club, you see. And that is a great grounding for everyone here.
The sense of stability in the boardroom is reflected in the team. The core of it is an impressively solid defence, centring on Willie Miller and Alec McLeish, and that man who sometimes seems as rare in Scottish football as an orchid in the Arctic, a very good goalkeeper.
We wouldn't have the performances on the park and the performances at training if there wasn't a lot of harmony in the club, and we've got a lot of respect and faith in the manager, and he'd likewise, so it rubs off on a Saturday.
And there's Willie Miller in the outside right position. Let's see what his cross is. Right, that's not bad at all. Black! Oh, superbly from Willie Miller.
Well, we seem to get on okay on the park. I think maybe we got on better off the park as well. We share a room together and we got on well. Alex, he's a bit of a comedian. I'm the quiet one in the partnership. So I just leave it to
I
Alec
helped
to
to
keep
carry
them
his
amused.
wallet.
Aberdeen publicly declared their equality with the Old Firm at Gothenburg in 1983. They survived some bad moments to go on and win the final of the European Cup Winners' Cup, defeating probably the most celebrated club team in the world, Real Madrid.
And your heart was in your mouth, and in the next minute, the referee's blown whistle for time up. Remember, quite unique.
Dundee United, another team from the East Coast, have competed with Aberdeen in threatening the supremacy of the Old Firm. Their keen competitiveness has won them 2 Scottish League Cups and 1 League Championship in the last 6 seasons. They're a side who refuse to be intimidated by reputations, and the skillful vigour of the challenge they offer every season has enlivened the game in Scotland. The source of their commitment is one of the most enigmatic figures in Scottish football, their manager Jim McLean. His team and Alec Ferguson's Aberdeen have been called the New Firm.
Well, I mean, I think I appreciate the job he's got. It's a hard job, and I think he appreciates the job I've got. It's hard, because it's hard to win things in Scotland against the Old Firm, you know. So their jobs are not unalike, you know. And we go back a long time to the coaching schools, and he stole all my ideas that day. But he tells you the other story, of course. But no, I think that we've gone with a lot of the managers, and Jim's a very intense person. He's totally devoted to the game, and as I am too. So that we have a good relationship.
But while the similarities between the 2 managers of the New Firm are real enough, there is one significant difference. Dundee United's success has been achieved without the financial resources of Aberdeen. For Jim McLean's team to have won as much as they have is remarkable.
We at Dundee United know that we're a provincial club. We're in a different league entirely from the Rangers, Celtic and the Aberdeens financially. We don't fear them when we play them in games and whatever, but without any shadow of doubt, we have the same problems as most other managers in the league.
The way Dundee United's problems have been solved on the field has a lot to do with the obsessive dedication of their manager. He has painstakingly welded a successful team together over years.
The players are now mates. You know, it's not like some clubs. You know, you leave at training, and that's you. You don't see your your fellow teammates until the next day. Here, it's completely different. I think also the players that Mr. McLean picks for the club, they don't have to be just football players. Their attitude has to be good. They have to be of good character and everything else. And I think it's now a family that he's brought all these boys together for so long. We've played together 6, 7, 8 years together, you know, and I think that is another aspect of why we've been successful.
Like most families, Dundee United put on their best face in public, but relations with the father figure are not always as harmonious as the play.
We don't really overwork the relationship. They just do what they like, and I take credit when they win and I blame them when we get beat. But I don't think if you're a manager that... somebody said to me really early in my career, that, do you not think you're a wee bit hard on them? I says, no way. I says, I am hard on them. I said, because I've decided that I don't know how successful I'll be as a manager, but there's one thing certain. They'll know exactly what I'm thinking, whether they like it or whether they don't. And if I try to PE with them and keep in with them, then at the end of the day, I know too many people that's out of the game at the moment that have been really nice people and definitely know quite a bit about football, and they're out of the game. So as far as I'm concerned, it's like any manager's job. You do the job to the best of your capabilities, and at the end of the day, you must be 100% honest. That's the part that the players don't like, although I hope that they have respected it over the years. I know that the players that have left here are far more appreciative of these factors than probably some of the ones that's now had it for 10, 12 years, because it's a long time to hear me moaning.
When he come to the club, his methods, even at the moment, a lot of, we don't get on with him at times with our fallouts and that, but he's a hard man to deal with. But everybody respects him for what he's done for the club and for the players individually and as a team. I think if it hadn't been for him, in fact, we know if it hadn't been for him, we wouldn't have got where we are at the moment, He wants to win every game, he wants to be perfect, he wants his players to be perfect.
Jim McCain's a disciplinarian. He's a very hard man. He expects 100% from everybody because he gives 100%. And I've always found him to be as everybody says, I'm a very honest man who gives 100% and expects it back and looks for perfection.
But what do you look for? Half perfection. As far as I'm concerned, I'll keep aiming to be looking for perfection. And as long as the players don't watch this programme, I'm not really expecting them to be perfect. But if I try and look for less than that, they'll definitely give me less, because there's no way they're going to make me smile.
Milne. Wriggles clear. Might just get the chip, and he does! He's scored! Oh, what a great...
Dundee United and Song are among the most fluidly creative teams in the Scottish game. It is one of the mysteries of Jim McLean's career that such exciting football should emerge from such a dour philosophy.
Watch you don't catch me smiling, spoil 14 years' work.
Jim McLean's 14 years' work has contributed something important not only to Dundee United, but to football generally. The focus of football in Scotland has tended to ignore the smaller teams. Jim McLean's achievement reminds us of their importance. Dundee United's success gives hope to those fans who have kept the faith for years on dull winter days. Maybe someday their vigil will be rewarded, and their team too will come good at last.